Welcome to our YouTube channel. Today is December 25th, 2017. The last several days have been very rainy and wet, and today is pretty and sunshiny. I really wish I had taken my camera with me last night when I went out into the woods because it was still drizzly and rainy. And I asked the Lord to help me to start a fire with flint and steel out there. And he did. He showed me how to do it, and I just wanted to share with you. But what I'd like to share before I go out into the woods is why I'm doing this. Why am I trying to learn wild medicinals and edibles? Why am I trying to learn how to start fire with flint and steel? In Matthew chapter 24, particularly verses 15 and 16, the Lord tells us that the time is coming when those who are faithful to Him will have to flee to the wilderness. I believe that it behooves us to make preparation for that time, and if you don't understand that fully, and it's beyond the scope of this video for me to go into too much depth, because the purpose of this video is simply to show what I did to start a fire with flint and steel when everything is wet. And but if you don't understand why Christians should learn these skills, then I encourage you to go to our YouTube channel and look at our Jim Buller playlist. Brother Buller goes into great detail to explain all of this, and I think it would be a great blessing to you. Let's see what we can do. For those of you who have seen our other videos, you'll remember when we put this little pipe in. And just to let you know exactly how wet it is out here, even though the sun was out this morning, it's going away. There's a little snow dust on the ground. But 2 days ago, the creek had flooded so much that it pushed this pipe, this very pipe, out of the spring, and I found it down up behind the house, which is about a quarter mile from here. So it's been very wet, so everything out here is wet. This is the very tree where I was last night, and it was very wet. It was misty last night and rainy and cloudy. And I'm not an expert at flint and steel fire starting. I'm just learning. But I just want to share with you what I'm finding that works. When I first tried to start a fire in the woods after it had rained, I came out. I believe that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us, and I believe that He's promised the Holy Spirit to be our teacher. And so I asked Him to show me what things that I could use for tinder. And He showed me a tree like this. A standing dead tree is a treasure in wet weather for kindling when you're trying to start a fire. And so as it was very wet last night, I didn't have this kit. I just had I did use char cloth, and I had a piece of wet, and I had my steel, and I had all four of my border collies out here, so I'm sorry if they make racket. But at any rate, when the time comes that God's people have to flee to the wilderness, char cloth is not going to be renewable. It's not going to be a renewable resource. But what's in this tin will be. This is punkwood. And punkwood is everywhere out here. It's right here in this tree. I'll show you in just a minute. But when punkwood is charred down, it holds a spark very well. And I am trying to master, and it is an art to be mastered, I'm trying to master the art of throwing a spark into the punkwood, because that's a renewable resource as long as you have your steel. So that's something to remember, that if you have a tin with punkwood in it, I've got some that's not charred down in here that I want to get charred down. But the charred punkwood looks like little chunks of charcoal, and it holds a spark very well. But another thing that you can do until the time comes that you master throwing a spark into here. The benefit of this is it's going to burn a lot longer and a lot hotter than just a little piece of char cloth, and it's going to help you to get a fire started better, and it can actually help to dry out your tinder if it's just a little bit wet. So until I can master that, which I have not yet, I have been able to do it. I've done it several times to throw a spark into the can. Some people say that, like I'm left-handed and normally I hold my steel in my right hand and strike like this. Some say that if you reverse and strike with the rock, it will throw the spark down better. But that hasn't been all that successful for me. So if you have any suggestions on how to learn that, then I welcome those suggestions. I'm here to learn. I want to learn. So when I prayed and asked the Lord to show me, He showed me like underneath cedar trees there's dry twigs or drier twigs that can be gathered. And then inside these trees like this, there's a lot of dry punk wood. And so you can dig out the punk wood. Emma, yuck. You almost want to take your knife, and I have a full-tang Mora. It's a very inexpensive knife, but it's very effective. It's got a stainless steel blade, which is harder to sharpen, but it holds an edge better. And these are good little knives. So what I did last night, by the way, especially if your tinder is wet, when you've gathered your tinder and you're ready to start a fire, gather twice the tinder that you think you need. That's one lesson that I've learned. It takes quite a bit, especially when things are damp, to get the fire going good. So what I did is I found a hole that was already started, like from insects and woodpeckers and stuff. You could see where I dug a hole in it last night whenever I started the fire out here last night. And all the pile that I had left here is all burned up. I can show you on the camera a little later. But at any rate, I just took my knife and just dug until I got a big old handful of punk wood. It's just very fine stuff like that. But I needed quite a bit of it. And so this is nowhere near enough, but it's a start. So I just will dig a bunch of this out. Be careful not to pull too hard on your knife blade. But I just make a little pile of it, and then I gather some bigger pieces too, and also some twigs. So I'll come back whenever I get my tinder started, and I'll show you whatever are gathered, and I'll show you what I did. Another thing I want to notice about looking for a dead standing tree like this whenever you need to start a fire and it's damp is walk around the tree, because more often than not what I have found is there is one side that's more dry. Whatever direction the prevailing winds come from, and the direction that our storm came from left this side of the tree relatively dry and untouched. So as I dig out within the tree, the tinder is very dry. I mean, it's not been wet at all. Okay, you can see I've got a little pile of really fine punk wood right here, and then behind it I've got a pile of larger pieces. My tin here, I took out most of the pieces of punk wood that I had in here because I want to show you another method in the meantime as you're learning how to use the punk wood tin. It's cold out here. I have my char cloth and my flint and my steel, and I'm going to go ahead and get my char cloth lit and see if we can't get this pile of tinder going. We got dogs wanting to get in on the program here. When you look for a piece of flint, look for a piece that's really glassy. You can see it, really glassy and smooth and has very sharp edges. It's along a sharp edge there that you want to line up your char cloth, and it's better if you have kind of frayed edges. So if they're not frayed, sometimes you can tear it a little bit to get a frayed edge. And then my steel is just a piece of old file that I ground down just a little bit. I'm actually making some kits with these steels and with the punk wood and the char cloth and stuff, so if you're interested, just let me know. So you want to hit with the least amount of contact and the greatest amount of force. And there's lots of videos on starting with char cloth, but anyway. Got it. I always try to make it a habit to put my steel right back in my pocket so that I don't lose it. That's not something you want to lose in a survival setting. So I got that lit, and I just put it in the middle of this really fine punk wood, kind of as a bird's nest, and I blow. It does take a while, but you'd have to be patient, and that's a good thing. You need to learn patience. This method will give you a nice bed of coals that you can use to dry out other tinder that may be a little bit damp yet. I've got some really good coals in there, but I want to keep going because I want to actually get a flame. You notice I'm not blowing right on top of the fire either. I'm kind of getting down low and blowing into it. That kind of creates a little bit of a draw so that the point here at the top acts a little like a chimney. Plus it's windy, so a little breezy, so that helps too. Just keep adding, and this actually kind of, using the punk wood this way, acts almost the same as the tin, except you're starting with a piece of char cloth instead of the punk wood in here. But one thing that you can do until you master throwing the spark into the can, you can light the char cloth just like I did and then put it in here, and this whole thing then becomes tinder, and it's very effective. Whenever I think of starting fire in the woods in a survival setting, I try to think of renewability. I think we've drifted out of the camera and I didn't realize it. So we've got a good bed of coals there. Whenever I think of starting fire in a survival setting, or any aspect of a survival setting, I try to think of renewability. You know, am I going to be able to renew this in the wilderness? This method is definitely renewable, so long as you don't lose your steel or your knife. You can also use your knife, some knives, as a striker. I've not done that yet. And adding larger pieces. We've got a nice bed of coals on the inside there now. Very small, but it's hot. I can feel the heat coming off of this now. I can warm my hands up, it's cold out here. And so now I can begin to add some small twigs that I found hanging in a tree, and they're beginning to dry out a little bit. You can kind of hear the water sizzling. But because I have a nice bed of coals inside there, it's going to stay hot and dry this out, and as I dry the smaller ones, then I can dry bigger ones and bigger ones and bigger ones until I can have a nice toasty campfire. I'll show you. Notice that I keep adding the punkwood so that I maintain my bed of coals as I'm drying out my bigger sticks. You got to maintain that. That's why I have a pile of it right there that I can keep adding. As I add sticks, I add punkwood. Yeah, this takes time. It takes patience and perseverance, but in my estimation, those are lessons that are vital, especially for a Christian. The wood is wet, but the punkwood is dry. Getting there. Now you can see we're getting quite a nice fire going here. I can easily warm next to it now. And we'll just get bigger and bigger sticks, and just because I have it, I can keep adding the punkwood just in case. But that's got a bed of coals under it that would enable me to dry out some smaller sticks and then bigger and bigger and bigger sticks. And learn to observe in nature where you can find things that are relatively dry. Don't try to gather tinder that's been laying on the forest floor, because that's going to be very wet. But I look for pieces that are suspended like this. This is dead, and it's been here a while. What's actually burning on the fire right now is the tip of this. You can see I already broke it off. So I'm going to gather some bigger pieces here and see if we can't get the fire a little bigger. I don't want to get it too big because I'm not going to be staying out here, but you get the idea. So from the time I started working on the fire to now, I guess it's been probably about 30 minutes to even get it to this point. So it does take some perseverance, as I said, but you know, in a survival situation, this is a very valuable skill to have. And even just, to me, it's just fun, you know, to learn new skills and how to do things and how things used to be done. I enjoy it. It's quite toasty now. I can easily warm my hands, and if I keep at this, you know, just keep a little punkwood so that you keep your coal bed if you need to, and until this wood dries out more. You could have a nice campfire. This is not the best location, you know, next to a tree like this. I knew I wasn't going to leave this burning, but I'm going to move. The smoke is choking me. But anyway, I just wanted to show you what you can do. So learn to, when you go out in nature, learn to pray and ask the Lord to show you, help you be observant. I can feel the moisture in these sticks, so they're not completely dry, but we have such a hot bed of coals in the bottom there that it's drying it out, and they are beginning to burn. So anyway, that's how I do it. It works for me. If you have suggestions or comments, feel free to leave them. And remember, our Next camp meeting is coming up May 16th through the 20th here at Closure for Jesus Farm. Dr. Norman McNulty will be our speaker, and looking forward to meeting all of you there. This is so much fun. Let's go.